Okay, so we remember the name.
Sifu and Coach.
Yeah.
Should we just call it lunch with Sifu and Coach?
Lunch. Well, we can do lunch. Oh, because the
lunch, right?
Yeah, lunch. Lunch with Sifu and Coach.
You don't like the word lunch, I can tell.
It's just, what if you don't eat one day?
That's true.
Then we're screwed.
That'll be Sifu and Coach.
Coach Csaba Lucas.
I'm Sifu Ryan Scott.
And welcome to another episode of Sifu and Coach.
Welcome.
Welcome, welcome. Bon appetit.
Yes, please, and thank you. We were talking about getting hit a few minutes ago.
Yeah, so we are not picking subjects. We literally just go with the flow, whatever comes to us. And of course, what do we talk about is getting punched, right? Getting punched, which makes sense for a martial artist, not so much for a coach.
Why don't you tell that story?
When I was 21, I was teaching martial arts, kickboxing, in Canada. And I was explaining something to the students, and one of the students was trying to do what I was explaining, and he kicked me on the neck. Totally unexpected. I was just explaining something.
It was unexpected for both of you, not just you.
It was unexpected for me. I want to believe it was unexpected for him as well.
Most likely.
And yeah, so immediately when you get hit like that, there is this rush of adrenaline. And how do you know, I dealt with it. It was fine. You know, it was just an interesting story. So I was asking him, how often do you get kicked and hit when you are full-time teaching for 20-something years, or I don't know how long you've been teaching, but for a long time.
Yeah, plenty of times. But and it's interesting to me because when you talk about like the visceral response that you have when you get hit is something that you know we experience doing martial arts in the beginning, but then it kind of gets like trained out of you. But for me, I get a similar kind of response, like what you're saying. It happened, and it's like you get kind of pissed off. I get that when I'm walking down the street and somebody steps on my sandal or my shoe, and I really I start to turn around like I'm going to punch that person in the face, and then I catch myself and I settle myself down. Somebody can punch me or kick me in the head, and I don't get that response anymore because it's happened so many times, unfortunately, to me in my practice of martial arts, that I've gotten hit and I'm totally used to it now. Well,
so let me bring you another experience when it comes to being hit and punched.
Please.
My wife is a klutz. She's very athletic, but she's a klutz.
I don't think the story is going where I initially thought it was going to go.
And she regularly kicks me, punches me, hits me by accident. You know, if it's on purpose, it's fun. You know, you play around.
That's fine.
And it's really interesting how a long time ago, we've been together for a long time, but it used to really shock me. Like she runs into me straight into my face with her head. And then you're like this, all right, I know it was an accident, it fucking hurts, right? So that's also interesting, you know, when your spouse, when your kids, you know, I have 4 kids, and inevitably when they're little, they headbang you. You're trying to take care of them, and they suddenly stand up and they hit you in the jaw, and there's that visceral reaction of like, and you know, I mean, they didn't mean it, but there's still that adrenaline, right?
Because the first thing that happens is that, and you know, and maybe it's not fair for me to say that today I don't get any response at all from getting hit. I think it's more like what you're saying, where it's like you have an initial response because your body has a response to getting hit
unexpectedly, right?
Yeah, if you don't expect it, and so in that way, maybe it's tampered a little bit if I'm like in sparring with somebody and I know somebody's trying to hit me, so it's kind of expected. But there's still a little bit of that, but then it kind of immediately goes away. But yeah, maybe it's really the unexpectedness of it.
I think so, because when I used to compete in kickboxing for a very short period of time, I did that, and that never happened to me. I never got pissed off really sparring unless it was something unfair. Again, I remember a particular case when a guy who I was sparring with said that, listen, my leg is hurting, so is that okay if we only punch? And I'm like, yeah, no problem. Of course, what happens in the heat, he kicked me straight in the face. So that pissed me off, I remember that.
Or we can have the same kind of visceral response to like an argument or something. It might be something unexpected, or it's just some kind of like big emotion that somebody's giving you, and your first response is to kind of get caught up in that. And then what we try to do is be able to recognize that and be able to like let it go. And so I think that's part of just getting older and having dealt with it many times before and recognizing like, oh, this is happening, and I know what's happening because this has happened to me hundreds, thousands of times before. I can let myself kind of get pissed off. I can let myself get caught up in this emotion, or I can just, okay, as soon as I recognize it, I can let it go.
Something I find interesting, doesn't matter who you are, you enjoy punching a bag. You know?
Right. If you do it right and you don't hurt yourself.
If you do it right, if you don't, but the only way you can also know how to do it if you practice.
Yeah, and you usually find out how to do it right by doing it wrong. The first time, and you go, oh, that's not right.
Yeah.
Then you fix it.
Yeah. So that's the duality, right? The duality of everything. That the only way you can know what's right if you know what's wrong. That's the beauty of everything in life. Right, and oftentimes our bodies respond through pain to what's wrong, and our society looks at pain as something to avoid, as opposed to take it as a guiding.
Back to like the way that parents are just trying to make their kids avoid pain completely. You get kind of an unhealthy relationship with pain, and it's something that you want to recognize, like this is there for a reason. It's telling me something, and I can listen to it, rather than it's happening and this is scary and I don't want to deal with it at all. Like so many things.
But there's a lot of wisdom in pain. The body gives you a signal through pain. What is the wrong way to go? If you put your hand towards the fire and it hurts, there's the signal to go to the opposite direction, and that can also be used as a metaphor. Oftentimes that. If you do something that's causing you pain, maybe look towards the opposite direction, and the right answers are there. If fighting with your spouse is unknowing and it's painful, maybe the opposite is the right thing to do. Right?
Whatever that is.
So relationship with pain, I think is something that in our modern world we need to examine. I had a question I wanted to ask you for a long time, and I keep forgetting about it.
This is the time. Let's go.
Yeah. So it's about aging. Because martial art has a special wisdom about aging. Usually when you are a master martial artist, you are not 8 years old. Right?
Usually. It's difficult to become a master
you're
of
not
anything
15,
when you're 8 years old. Yeah.
Right? You're not 25 really.
No.
If I think about a martial art master, I think about someone who's 40, 50, 60, whatever.
You look like these guys, which you probably can't see in the camera, but very old.
Age is something that we shy away from so much. Everyone is trying to stay young.
Yeah.
The young on the terms of trying to look young. Why is that we don't revere the older age as much, in your opinion?
I think that a big part of it is we're just so worried about dying. We're so like afraid of our own mortality, kind of related to being afraid of pain. It's like something that we don't even want to think about. I mean, I think some people honestly like being around older people. It makes them uncomfortable because they're reminded about, oh, this is going to be me someday. I might not be able to move as well, or I might not be able to do whatever. I think that's part of it, but I think if you are more surrounded with people who have really aged well, like a fine wine, and they're like getting better, they are wiser, they are happier. I think that would probably make a big difference. I just think that we just don't do a great job of aging in this country too.
I always had this idea that if you looked at someone, let's say 200 years ago, when they were born, and then 70 years later, the life they were born into and the life at 70 were pretty much the same.
Right.
There was no differentiation.
You mean like society?
Nothing really changed. The way how they lived when they were born and close after that, and 70 years later, there was no drastic change. Now think about today, a 70-year-old.
Oh yeah.
They were born right after the Second World War, right?
Yeah, things are a little bit different.
There was really, where I was born, there were no cars, there were definitely no phones, no TV. Very seldom those things were around. So the wisdom they grew throughout their lives didn't include internet, computers, cell phones, none of the things that pretty much most people I know uses for their work, for their lives to keep it going.
Right.
So they don't have wisdom in that. And I think that's why people don't look towards them, because the wisdom they have is not obviously lead to better performance in anything in life. And also you can succeed as a very young person today. If you look at the heads of the biggest companies of Facebook, you know, you can succeed at 30. You can have this huge influence at 30, but what you don't have in 30, you don't have wisdom.
Yeah, you know, that is a very interesting kind of side effect of the rapid growth in technology, where it's like things are coming up now that you just, if you weren't using this kind of technology when you were younger, it's just totally confusing. And wisdom, that's the thing that transcends, you know, all of this stuff. You know, and you could really know about computers, you can really know about programming or you know, something that's a much newer advent, but not really know much about anything else. Versus if you've got kind of that wisdom and experience, you end up knowing, you know, at least something about many things, and it transfers really well, and you'd end up being able to, you know, learn something that's very new, something that has just come up in the last couple of years in technology, but it kind of requires you to be able to put yourself in that situation. I think another problem is people just don't feel comfortable dealing with stuff that they don't know about.
But at the same token, if you think about it, if you succeed in IT, and I'm sorry I'm picking on IT, but if, let's say, you're really good with computers, that means you spent a lot of time with computers. That means you were out of balance and you spent a relatively little amount of time with people, right? So if you spend little time with people and now you're this powerful CEO of a company, of a tech company, now you need to be a manager, you need to be a mentor, you need to be a leader of people, right? And I think what the world is going to discover sooner or later, these young folks, that, okay, I'm a whiz in my field, so I need to surround myself with wise older people, because they're going to be able to bring me the structure so I can manage, I can lead the company in a way that all my responsibilities, which comes with my genius, is going to go towards the right things. Oh, you finished your food.
Yeah, I'm done.
Wow.
This has been far longer than
a
very
15-minute
slow conversation. Yeah, you eat very slowly. You talk too much.
No, thank you for this. This was fun.
Please subscribe. You can scroll down below and see the information, or click. I'm sure there's something right here you'll put under my finger. Click down here.
Yeah, it's subscribe. More over here, probably. over here. So click, subscribe, like. If you have any questions, please shoot it to us. We might be able to talk about it next time. Thank you for watching.